Let me start by saying this. If you're not a chosen one, this video is going to be tough to watch. Why? Because what I'm about to share isn't something everyone can understand or relate to. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. But if you've ever felt like you don't quite fit in, like there's something deeper inside you that the world doesn't see, then this video is for you. Truth is, not everyone is called to walk the path of the chosen. It's not an easy road, and it's certainly not a road many people would choose for themselves. But if you're still here, still listening, then I have a feeling this message is going to resonate with you in a way that nothing else has. This isn't just about feeling different. It's about knowing deep down that you're different, that God has placed something special inside you. And here's the thing. Once you recognize that you carry this sign, there's no going back. You'll see the world in a whole new light, and you'll understand why you've always felt set apart. So, if you're ready to hear the truth about what it means to be chosen, what it really means to carry this rare spiritual sign, then stick with me. But if this message makes you uncomfortable, or if it's hard to sit through, that might just be the sign that you're not meant to be on this journey. Only the chosen ones will get it. So, what does it really mean to be chosen? It's not about being better than anyone else, and it's not some exclusive club. Being chosen means you've been set apart by God for a specific purpose. It's as simple as that. It's not about status, fame, or recognition. Instead, it's about walking in alignment with God's plan for your life. You might not have asked for it, and honestly, it can feel like a heavy burden at times. But here's the beautiful truth verse: being chosen means you have a purpose that's bigger than you could ever imagine. God saw something in you, something He could use to bring light into this world, and He's calling you to step into that. You might not feel worthy, but remember, it's not about worth. It's about His calling. Maybe you've felt it for years, this sense that you're different. You see things differently. You feel things deeply. Maybe you've even felt misunderstood by people around you, like no one really gets what you're going through. Let me tell you, that feeling isn't by accident. Being chosen often means feeling a little out of place in this world, because, truthfully, you weren't made to fit in. God set you apart for a higher purpose. And yes, that can feel lonely at times, but it's also a reminder that God has something unique in store for your life. You're on a different path, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's exactly where you're supposed to be. The journey might be hard, but the destination divine. Let's look at the story of David for a moment. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, God says the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. You see, when Samuel went to anoint the next king of Israel, David wasn't even considered by his own family. He was out in the fields, tending sheep. Everyone looked at his older brothers, assuming they were the chosen ones. But God saw something different in David, something that no one else could see. It wasn't about how David looked or where he came from. It was about his heart. God chose David because He knew what was inside of him, and that's the same way God looks at you. He's not concerned with your background, your mistakes, or what others think about you. He sees your heart, and He knows exactly why He chose you for this unique journey. Now, let's talk about something really important, the sign that only chosen ones carry. It's not something you'll see written on your skin, or a mark you can point out to others. It's deeper than that. This sign is something spiritual, something that's tied to your very soul. It's not about a physical mark, but but rather a spiritual light that God has placed within you. This light shines brightly, even if you don't always see it yourself. It's what sets you apart, and believe me, others can feel it too. People might be drawn to you, or sometimes even put off by you, without really knowing why. That's the power of this sign. It's not something you flaunt, but it's something that's impossible to hide. It's a spiritual presence, a calling that rests on your life, and it marks you as one of God's chosen. So, what does this sign actually look like in your life? It shows up in the way you walk through the world. Chosen ones often have a quiet strength about them, even in difficult times. There's a sense of peace, a calm in the storm that others just don't have. People may come to you for advice, not because you have all the answers, but because there's something about your spirit that reassures them. It's like they can feel that you're connected to something bigger, something divine. Maybe you've noticed that you're able to see through the noise and focus on what really matters. Or you have an intuition that just can't be explained. This is the sign you carry. It's God's way of equipping you for the unique path He has you on. You may not always understand it, but trust me, this sign is a gift. It's a light within you that comes from God Himself. Jesus talks about this very thing in Matthew 5, verse 14, where He says, "You are the light of the world." A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. That's exactly what you are, a light in a world that often feels dark. You didn't choose this light, God gave it to you. And because of that, it can't be hidden. People will notice it, and sometimes they won't even know why. Some will be drawn to it, and others might even be uncomfortable around it because your light exposes things in them they'd rather keep hidden. But don't be discouraged. Jesus Himself tells us that this is exactly how it's supposed to be. Your light, this spiritual sign, is meant to shine even when it's difficult. You've been set apart to bring God's light into the world, and that's something truly special. One of the first characteristics that stands out in a chosen one is spiritual insight. It's like you see the world through a different lens. While others may only notice what's on the surface, you can sense deeper truths, things that go beyond what the eyes can see. It's almost like you have a built-in radar for spiritual matters. You might find yourself understanding things that others miss, whether it's a situation, a person, or even what's happening in the world. This isn't something you've learned or been trained for. It's a gift from God. He's given you this insight to help guide you and those around you. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him dreams and visions that no one else could understand at the time, but those insights were meant to prepare him for his future. Your spiritual insight works the same way. It's God's way of preparing you for what's ahead. Another key trait of a chosen one is a heart full of compassion. You feel deeply for others, even people you don't know personally. When someone is hurting, it's like you can almost feel their pain. This isn't a weakness. It's a reflection of the heart of Christ within you. Jesus was moved with compassion when He saw the crowds, and as His chosen one, you carry that same love for others. You might find yourself wanting to help, comfort, or guide people, even when it's inconvenient. But this is part of your calling to be a vessel of God's love in a world that's often cold and indifferent. Your compassion isn't something you can turn off, and honestly, you shouldn't want to. It's part of the light that you carry. As Ephesians 4, verse 32 says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." Your compassion is a reflection of Christ's love. Chosen ones often face more trials than most, and that's no accident. If you've noticed that your life seems to come with more challenges or hardships, it's because God is preparing you for something greater. But here's the good news: God doesn't leave you unequipped. One of the marks of a chosen one is resilience. You've been given the ability to withstand storms, to bounce back from adversity, and to keep going even when it feels impossible. It's not because you're stronger than everyone else, but because God is with you, guiding you through every trial. Romans 8, verse 28 reminds us that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Your struggles are not in vain. They're part of bigger plan to shape you into the person He's called you to be. Your resilience is a testament to God's strength in your life. Finally, one of the most defining traits of a chosen one is a strong sense of purpose. Even if you can't always see it clearly, you've probably always had this feeling that you're here for something bigger. That's because God has placed a calling on your life, and deep down, you know it. This sense of purpose can feel like a quiet nudge, or sometimes like a loud shout, reminding you that there's something important you're meant to do. You might not always know exactly what it is, but you know you're being led toward it. The chosen ones are often driven by this inner conviction, a belief that they are part of something greater than themselves. This is God's way of keeping you focused on His plan. Remember, as 1 Peter 4 verse 10 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Your purpose is tied to serving God and those around you. Now, you might be wondering, how can I know if I carry this sign in my own life? The first step is to take a moment to reflect. Think about the times in your life when you felt different, when you've stood out even though you didn't try to. Have you ever found yourself understanding things on a deeper level, or feeling like there's a purpose for your life that's bigger than you? Maybe you've experienced hardships that others just don't seem to face, yet somehow you always find the strength to get back up. These aren't coincidences. These are all signs that God is working in your life. The fact that you're watching this video right now could be part of that journey. It's not about being perfect. It's about being open to what God is doing in you. So, if you've ever felt that quiet nudge in your spirit, it's worth paying attention to. Let's look at the story of Joseph for a moment. Joseph was one of the most misunderstood people in his family. He was the youngest of his brothers and constantly faced jealousy, rejection, and betrayal. Yet, God had given him dreams, visions that pointed to a greater purpose. In Genesis 37, we see how Joseph's own brothers plotted to harm him, throwing him into a pit and selling him into slavery. But through all of that, Joseph held on to the promise God had placed in his heart. Years later, that same Joseph became a leader in Egypt and was used by God to save countless lives, including those of the very brothers who betrayed him. You see, Joseph's hardships were never random. They were all part of God's plan to elevate him to a position where he could fulfill his purpose. The same can be true in your life. Those difficult moments you faced might just be part of a greater story that's still unfolding. So, if you're recognizing some of these signs in your own life, let me encourage you to trust in God's process. It's not always easy, and there will be times when you feel completely alone or overwhelmed. But remember, God has set you apart for a reason. The trials you face are not meant to break you, but to shape you. Just like Joseph, you may not see the full picture right now, but God does. He knows exactly what He's doing, and He's using every situation every trial to prepare you for something greater. Don't give up on the journey just because it gets hard. In fact, those hard moments are often the very proof that you're on the right path. Keep trusting, keep believing, and know that God's plan for your life is unfolding exactly as it should. Let's be real, being chosen often means walking a lonely path. It's not something people like to talk about, but it's the truth. If you've ever felt like you're on the outside looking in, even when you're surrounded by people, you're not alone in that feeling. Many chosen ones experience deep isolation, not because there's anything wrong with them, but because the calling on their life sets them apart. You may notice that you don't fit into the same mold as everyone else, and that can be tough. Maybe your values are different, or the things that matter to you don't seem to resonate with the people around you. And that's hard. It can feel like no one really gets you. But let me tell you, this isolation isn't a punishment. It's part of the process. God often uses seasons of isolation to draw you closer to Him and prepare you for the purpose He has for your life. If you're feeling isolated, I want you to know that you're in good company. Some of the most powerful people in the Bible experienced deep loneliness as part of their journey. Think about Moses. He spent 40 years in the desert before God called him to lead His people. Or Elijah, who after performing great miracles, fled to the wilderness, feeling utterly alone and asking God to take his life. In those moments of isolation, it wasn't the end of their stories. It was a pivotal part of their preparation. God was shaping them in the quiet, in the solitude, for something bigger. And the same is true for you. Deuteronomy 31 verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Even in your isolation, God is with you. He's preparing you for something greater. It's easy to feel discouraged when you're going through a season of loneliness. You might look around and wonder, why is this happening to me? Why don't people understand me? But what if I told you that this isolation is actually a sign that you're on the right path? God sometimes removes us from certain situations or people to help us focus on Him and the purpose He has for our lives. He's not doing it to hurt you, but to grow you. Remember, diamonds are formed under pressure, and gold is refined in the fire. The same goes for you. This season of isolation is not your beginning. It's where God strips away distractions and builds you up for what's next. You're being prepared, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. So hold on to His promise. He's with you, even when it feels like no one else is. Being chosen isn't just about being set apart or carrying a special sign. It comes with responsibility. When God places a calling on your life, He's entrusting you with something valuable, something that's meant to impact the world around you. You see, it's not just about you, it's about what God wants to do through you. And that's where the responsibility comes in. You've been given a gift, and with that gift comes a mission. It might be to serve others, to spread love, or to bring hope where it's desperately needed. But whatever your mission is, it's not meant to be kept to yourself. In the parable of the talents, Jesus talks about how each of us is given gifts by God, and it's our responsibility to use those gifts wisely. Sitting on them or burying them isn't an option. You've been called to be a light in this world, and that's not a task to be taken lightly. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by this responsibility, especially when you think about how big God's plan might be. But here's the thing, God never gives you more than you can handle. He's not asking you to change the entire world by yourself. He's asking you to be faithful in the little things, and He'll handle the rest. You don't have to have it all figured out today. Maybe it's as simple as being kind to someone who's struggling, offering a word of encouragement, or using your gifts in ways that bless others. Start where you are and trust that God will guide your steps. Matthew 5, verse 16 reminds us, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Your responsibility isn't to carry the weight of the world, but to be faithful in shining the light God has placed inside of you. Let's go back to the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, verse 14-30. In this story, a man gives his servants different amounts of talents, or money, to take care of while he's away. 2 of the servants invest their talents wisely, and when the master returns, they are rewarded. But one servant buries his talent in the ground, out of fear, and he is rebuked for it. The message here is clear. Verse, we are entrusted with gifts, talents, and responsibilities, and it's our job to use them to glorify God. When we choose to bury those gifts or ignore the calling on our life, we're not just hiding something small, we're holding back from fulfilling the purpose God has for us. So, don't be afraid to step out in faith. God has equipped you for this journey. Your responsibility is to be obedient to His calling, and He will take care of the rest. As a chosen one, you'll likely face challenges that others may never understand, and one of the biggest battles you'll fight is spiritual warfare. It's not a popular topic, but it's real. The enemy knows that you've been set apart, that you carry something powerful, and because of that, you become a target. You might notice that when you're moving closer to your purpose, suddenly everything seems to go wrong. Maybe it's in your relationships, your health, or even your mental and emotional state. The enemy tries to throw you off track, to make you question your calling, your worth, and even God's plan for your life. But here's the truth. No matter what the enemy throws at you, he can't stop what God has started. Ephesians 6, verse 12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." You're not fighting these battles alone. God is with you every step of the way. When challenges come, and they will, it's easy to feel discouraged. You might wonder why. If you've been chosen by God, you're facing so many difficulties. But here's the thing. Those challenges are not there to destroy you. They are there to strengthen you, to build your faith, and to prepare you for the calling God has placed on your life. Think of it like a refining process. Just like gold is refined in the fire, your character, your faith, and your resilience are being refined through these challenges. Romans 5, verse 3-4 says, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope." God is shaping you into someone who can carry the weight of your calling. It may be tough now, but remember, every struggle is a step toward becoming the person God created you to be. Even though the challenges might feel overwhelming at times, take heart, God has already promised you the victory. John 16, verse 33 says, "In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world." That's your reassurance right there. Jesus has already overcome every obstacle, every challenge, every spiritual attack you will ever face. You're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. That means no matter how hard it gets, no matter how many times you fall, you're never truly defeated. God's plan for your life is unstoppable. So, when the challenges come, remember that they're not the end of your story. They're They're just part of the journey. Stay grounded in prayer. Keep your eyes on God and trust that He is fighting for you. The victory is already yours, and nothing can take that away. So, if you're listening right now and thinking, "This sounds like me," I recognize these signs in my own life. You might be wondering what to do next. The first step is to embrace your purpose. Accept that you are chosen by God for a reason. It might feel overwhelming or even a bit scary, but remember that God doesn't make mistakes. He knows exactly why He set you apart. Start by opening your heart to His plan. Spend time in prayer, asking God to reveal more of His purpose for you. Be honest with Him about your fears and uncertainties. It's okay to feel unsure. What's important is that you're willing to step forward. Just like Moses, who doubted his ability to lead but trusted God's calling, you too can move forward in faith. Trust that God will equip you with everything you need along the way. Next, take practical steps to live out your calling. Begin by deepening your relationship with God. Make time each day to read the Bible and meditate on His Word. Let scriptures guide you and speak into your life. Surround yourself with people who support and encourage your journey, friends, family, or a faith community that understands your path. They can provide wisdom, accountability, and prayer support. Also, pay attention to the gifts and talents God has placed inside you. Maybe you're a natural encourager, a talented artist, or someone who has a heart for helping others. Use those gifts to serve and uplift those around you. As it says in 1 Peter 4 verse 10, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Don't wait for the perfect moment or until you feel completely ready. Start where you are and let God work through you. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Throughout the Bible, we see stories of ordinary people called to do extraordinary things because they were willing to say yes to God. Think of Esther, who risked everything to save her people, or David, who faced giants with just a sling and a stone. Joshua 1 verse 9 reminds us, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Take comfort in knowing that God is with you every step of the way. Embrace your calling, take action, and watch how He moves in your life. Let me take a moment to remind you that this journey you're on, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Being chosen by God means walking a path that's different from the rest. There will be times when you feel weary, when the road ahead seems uncertain, and you might even question if you're truly called. But let me tell you this verse, God doesn't make mistakes. If He chose you, it's because He knows you have everything you need inside of you to fulfill His purpose. The struggles you face are not there to break you. They are there to build you. Each challenge, each setback is preparing you for the greater things God has in store. So, don't give up. Even when it feels like you're walking alone, remember that God is right there with you, guiding your steps and cheering you on every step of the way. I know it can be frustrating when you don't see things happening as quickly as you'd like. You might wonder why God is taking so long, or why you haven't yet stepped fully into your calling. But trust this, God's timing is perfect. Isaiah 40 verse 31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." God knows exactly when and how to move in your life. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place. Until then, stay faithful. Keep praying, Keep serving and keep trusting that God is working behind the scenes in ways you can't yet see. Remember, it's not about how fast you get there. It's about becoming the person God created you to be along the way. As you continue on this journey, hold tight to God's promises. He never promised it would be easy, but He did promise that He would never leave you. Isaiah 41 verse 10 reminds us, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." You are chosen, you are loved, and God is with you every step of the way. Trust Him, lean on Him, and know that He has amazing things in store for you. Before we wrap up, I want to encourage you to take a moment and reflect. Do you see these signs in your own life? How has God been guiding you on your journey as a chosen one? I'd love to hear about your experiences, so feel free to share them in the comments below. If this message has touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need this reminder today. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future messages that are here to encourage and uplift you on your spiritual journey. We're all in this together, and I'm so grateful to walk alongside you. Thank you for being here, and remember, God has a beautiful purpose for your life.